Yeah, I think I Googled labrum tears and hip impingement, and then you popped up, and then I started looking at your website, and I downloaded like exercises for like the hip, and you have a lot of free stuff. So I downloaded all that, and I just started doing all the tissue work with like the balls and foam rollers and all the stretches that you have, and I literally just started doing that and completely changed everything. Because all I
That's
was
all.
doing was Bikram yoga originally. So in 2015, it was like August of 2015, but I didn't know that I had a labrum tear. So I started having pain. Actually, what happened, I was sitting on my couch and I kind of like had my left leg bent and it kind of fell open and I heard like a tear, but I'm like, you know, and I paused and I didn't think anything of it because I could move my leg afterwards and nothing happened. But a couple months later, my leg started to hurt. I'm like, this is weird. But I didn't mention that to the doctor. It didn't dawn on me till 6 months later. But the doctors just said you have bursitis and arthritis. I'm like, okay, so here's some pills they gave me. But by December, I couldn't walk. Like I couldn't bend my leg. I couldn't lift my leg, nothing. And I'm like, I had done Bikram yoga off and on for years. And so I started that in the 3 months I got better, like a little better. And so I went back to the doctor and asked for an MRI to see what exactly was wrong with me. And they're like, oh, you have a labrum tear. I'm like, okay, what is a labrum tear? I didn't know what that was. And then the solution for them was to give me a hip replacement. And I was like, whoa, 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 like you haven't even sent me to PT. And in my head, after 3 months that I got better just from yoga, I was like, that doesn't make sense that you're going to go straight to giving me a hip replacement when this is helping me. So for an entire year of 2016, I did that. But he scared me because he told me not to lift weights. So then I met a chiropractor at the end of 2016, and which is funny, you look just like him. So I'm like, hey, I found this guy. Well, later on, I told him about you. I'm like, he's your twin. And he told me, like, are you lifting weights? Are you strengthening your glutes and your hamstrings? I'm like, all I do is hot yoga. That's all I do. He's all, why? And I'm like, well, because that doctor told me not to lift weights. He's all, why? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I was naive. I didn't know. He said, no, you need to do squats and lunges, everything I hated doing. So that helped me a lot too, but I still had that pain. And then later on, I found you in like 2016, I think. And then that completely changed everything too. I tell everybody about you at work. So I teach yoga at work. I'm a recreational therapist, but I also teach yoga. I work at Balboa Hospital. There's this guy, his name is Shane from gotwrong.com. And I don't know if they look you up or whatever, but I always like say stuff about you because I'm like, you help me a lot.
Oh, that's super sweet. Thank you for saying that. I
Yeah.
find your story really fascinating for several reasons. One is because you had all these problems in your hip, labral tear, arthritis, and more. And one, it's interesting that the doctors jumped straight to total hip replacement, nothing less expensive, less invasive, less intense, straight to let's just plug in a new hip. And I think that's important because it's the old saying, like, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so if you're a trained surgeon, and this isn't to say that all trained surgeons are like this, but for some of them, the answer to everything is almost just hip replacement or surgery right away because that's what they're experts in. I think the really good ones first say, well, let's try these physical therapy or something non-invasive. But it's shocking that that's straight where they jumped to, because it sounds like you've been pretty successful without the surgery, with stretching and the self-massage that you learned from me and strength training as well.
Yeah. I was just like really shocked. And about a year later, I asked, because I had met with my doctor who referred me to that doctor. I'm like, I don't know why he said to go straight to hip replacement. But then she like looked at the notes and she said, well, because your hips were off. I'm like, hip dysplasia. I'm like, okay. And he said that we can fix the tear, but it wouldn't make your pain go away because your hips were off. I'm like, okay. And then she's all, well, you want a second opinion? Which was a year later. I'm like, yeah, send me to somebody else. So she sent me to another doctor, and he's all, yeah, I don't know why he suggested a hip replacement. And especially since you've come this far and you're better, but he's all, yeah, I see the tear, but it's not even that bad. So keep doing what you're doing, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because it's working. So that was kind of upsetting too, that if I would have been a dumb, naive person that I just wanted to get better right now, I would have probably have more problems, because I have met people who had 2 labrum tears and got surgery, and they're in worse shape now than they were before.
Right. Which, I mean, I always think it's important to try to find the middle ground, because I don't think, and I doubt that you think, that surgery in all situations is always bad for all people. It probably has its time in its place. It's just not. It's not a home run slam dunk guarantee, like 100% effectiveness. So that's one thing, and it shouldn't be the first option, because there's so many other things that you can try before that. I also wanted to touch on something that you said, because it sounds like you're doing 3 of what I consider the most important things that you could do for your hips, which is strength training, stretching, and self-massage. Yeah. And I don't know in the people that you work with, or your friends or family, or whoever, I'm guessing, because this is my experience, that people that are working on some physical pain in their body often aren't doing those 3 pillars. They might be doing 1, maybe 2 of them. They might be, I'm a yoga person. I do yoga all the time, and that's what I do. But they might be missing the deadlifting and squatting with good technique and with safe ranges of motion, of course. Or maybe they're a gym goer and they're like, the answer to everything is strengthen something. Something's weak and I got to strengthen it. And they just lift weights, and they could really benefit from some Bikram yoga or some yoga. And then, of course, the third thing, which almost everyone, it's probably the most missed thing in my opinion, is the deep targeted tissue work that I teach in a lot of my programs. And I think that combination of all of them is the most effective. So I'm glad that you found your way to all 3 of them. And I'm glad that it's helped your hips a lot.
And I think nutrition plays a big part too on feeling better and healing. So I don't want to blame COVID, but I let myself go a little bit. So I'm trying to lose weight again. Not a lot, but I had gained weight and then lost it and gained it again. But this time I really want to not gain it back ever again. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't help the body either.
Yeah, that's totally important. I mean, what I hear and what you're saying is not just focusing on the exercises that you can do on this one specific part of your body, but also stepping way, way back and looking at some of the more intangible things like nutrition, like sleep, like stress management, what I call sort of lifestyle things, which aren't like, which stretch do I need to do to make my hip feel better? But they really make a difference, like what you put into your body and the amount of weight that you carry and your stress levels, and do you meditate or not meditate, all of that stuff. It might only contribute like 1%, 2%, 5% to the overall healing that you're doing, but it contributes 8%, and that percent compounded over time adds up to a radical difference. It's something that I put a lot of focus on when I was coming out of my own hip problems, was not just getting super narrowly focused on which yoga stretch do I need to do, which one exercise is going to fix me, but also all that other stuff that I just mentioned. And it really makes a difference.
It does. I tell my patients that all the time, like, it's not one thing, like, and they have to go through their own, the journey to figure out what's going to work for them and what's not. I'm like, you don't have to do yoga, you don't have to meditate, but find something that you like, that you don't necessarily have to do with everybody else, because the real work starts when you dig deep on your own and not try to find all the answers everywhere else. So it's tough to explain that to somebody if they haven't experienced that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that experiential learning makes all the difference. I mean, I imagine as a yoga teacher, you probably have a bit of a meditation practice, or possibly, I don't know.
Yeah, I meditate practically every day.
Yeah. And so then you actually can relate to what I'm about to say, which is, you know, when you do your yoga or your self massage or even your strength training and you do it in a much more meditative or mindful way, the quality of it just goes way, way up. I mean, it's not that crazy to imagine. Like even if I'm washing the dishes and I'm doing it mindfully or unmindfully, the quality of my work is going to be so much better. So that's another one of those intangible things that I try to share with at least the people that I get to talk to one-on-one like this. If they don't have some sort of a mindfulness practice, I encourage them to start one up to the degree that they can. For some people, that might be going away to a 10-day Vipassana retreat, which I'm a big, big fan of. Or it might be just, while they're doing their mobility work that I've given them, they try to make it as tuned in and meditative as possible. Because if let's say you do 5 mobility sessions per week, and each one of them, it was quiet, there was no distractions, your eyes were closed a lot of the time, you were tuned into the body sensations that you were feeling, I'm going to say that you're going to be 40% more effective than you would have been if you had been watching TV or in a gym talking to people while you're rolling around and stretching or whatever. And 40% every session over 5 sessions per week, and then 4 or 5 weeks in a month, that really adds up over time. So it's like that's another one of those seemingly intangible things that really makes a huge difference in the long run.
Yeah, I completely agree. Half the time I have my eyes closed when I'm like doing my yoga and I'm just like, okay, feel the body. Cause I really, it's a practice and it takes time. I mean, I've been doing yoga off and on forever, but since I've become a yoga instructor, it's even different and it's more intense. So, and like I said, people, oh, I can't touch my toes. I can't do this. I'm like, that's why you do it, because you can't touch your toes. But it's so hard to have people switch that thing in their mind to like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm like, do it for 5 minutes, do it for 10 minutes, do it for 15. You don't have to spend an hour or 2 hours. Just start somewhere. And then once you recognize the benefits, you'll keep doing it, because I can't stop. I can't not do my yoga. And when I do, I don't have time, or like I can't. Cause my dad passed away in June, so a lot of stuff was going on there, in and out of the hospital and stuff. And there was a couple nights that I just was exhausted and I just came home. But other than that, or I'll just go lay in my yoga room and I'll just, end up falling asleep. But I'll even do that just to go in that space.
Yeah, and just to give your nervous system a chance to just down-regulate and just relax a bit. I read an interesting study a while back that showed that there was like 2 groups of people that they were studying. One group that was given a stretching program and one group that was getting given a meditation program. The meditators didn't stretch at all, but after the end of, I don't know what it was, 10, 12 weeks, some period of time, the people meditating and not stretching got more flexible than the people stretching, which isn't to say that stretching doesn't work or doesn't do anything. Like, obviously it does. My takeaway from that is do both. Stretch and do it mindfully, do it meditatively, and you'll get double the benefits. And what that basically says to me is that it's not just going through the motions. It's not just doing the hip flexor stretch. It's not just doing pigeon pose. It's doing it and actually having the skill to drop and get your nervous system to unclench and let go, which you can get from any kind of meditation, mindfulness type practice. So that's cool. I wanted to go back to something that you said earlier that we said. We were talking about how as you start doing more stretching and more massage and more strengthening and your awareness starts to grow, on the one hand, it can kind of seem like, oh my God, I'm now aware of more problems than I was before. Like, it seems like everything is wrong in my body. But we know massaging and stretching and strengthening your body doesn't make your body worse. Of course, athletes wouldn't do any of that stuff if it was making their body worse. But I think it's important because in moments, your mind can feel like, oh my God, I'm noticing so much more about myself. Am I getting worse? And in those moments, I think it's good to step back and look at the really big picture, like where was I a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago? And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to give voice to the big picture of your journey, because from what I've heard you say, it's like, you were on the verge of a total hip replacement. They were
Yeah.
like, the doctor, you have arthritis in your hip, you've got a labral tear, you've got all these problems, and you were about to get a surgery, or you were recommended a surgery. And then how long ago was that, and where are you now? Just so we can get sort of a contrast of what's changed in the picture.
Okay, yeah. Well, so in 2015, when it first happened, and I still didn't know that's what it was, within the 6 months, I was not able to walk. I was stopping because my hip would catch, still not knowing that's what my issue was. They told me I had bursitis and arthritis. I'm like, okay. And like I said, I couldn't like cross my leg. I couldn't like bend it. I couldn't lift it. I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't sit. Everything hurt. I couldn't even sleep. Like it was bad. I mean, I had friends had to help me get out of the car. And I'm like, what is this? What is this crap? And then now I am doing things that I never in a million years would think that I could do. I can do a back bend, not great like you, but I can do back bends. I had one chiropractor, not the one that looks like you, but one chiropractor look at my x-rays, and I didn't even know that my L5 is fused to my sacrum. I didn't know that, which I guess he said it's congenital. I'm like, okay, but my vertebrae, some are fusing together. And he's like, you're not in any more pain? I'm like, no. He's like, well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I'm like, okay. So I have that, and I guess my neck is straight instead of have a curve. But with all what the x-ray shows and what I am now, I feel like I'm 10 times more improved. And just the awareness of, like, even right now I'm sitting, but I keep going this way. So more awareness of where my body is in space. And just the yoga thing I totally fell into. It wasn't I wanted to be a yoga instructor, but now since I did become a yoga instructor, and just being able to tell my patients, like, because they come in saying that the doctor's gonna do back surgery and this. I'm like, you're 23 years old. What do you know? And so I go and I tell them my story. I'm like, they wanted to give me a hip replacement. I'm like, I'm twice your age. And if I can get better without surgery, you can. Sometimes they like take the advice, and sometimes they just want the quick fix, and then they come back later. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm like, I can't believe where I've come. And I went to Peru in 2017 as a test for myself, for my hip, to see how far I had come, but that was only like a year and a half. Which my back went out, like we went on a trek, and I don't even know how I did the first day, because we were like from like 9 to 12,000 feet. I don't know, we were really high. And I ended up making the first day, but the next day I'm like, I have to bow, and I can't, because my back just wasn't ready. My hip wasn't ready. And then I was actually, a month or two ago, I went to Palm Springs, and I went to the tram up top over there, and I think it's like almost 10,000 feet. And my friends, it's not a big hike, but we were up there, and I was going up the hill and doing all this stuff, and there was a couple, a lady that they were sitting, and I heard her say she was like 49. I'm like, there's no excuses. Keep going, keep going. She's like, I just had a hip replacement. I'm like, I have a tear in my head. Come on, keep going. I'm like, don't quit. And that was just like made me like, I've come a long way since 2015 of not being able to do a damn thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. That's quite the vivid picture of, like, I'm picturing you with the doctor, and he's like, you need a hip replacement, and look at this x-ray, and your spine is fused, and it's like, I don't know if you've heard the saying, you are not your x-ray, you are not your MRI.
Yeah.
Because very often we can look at that and hear the words coming out of the professional's mouth and just be so like, that's what I am. Like, and it becomes this solidified concrete thing. Like, I am permanently kind of broken in a kind of way. But I think what people don't realize is that I can be bent and crooked with hip impingement and scoliosis and neck pain, and not neck pain, but like, a spinal vertebrae that's not perfect. And I can still splits and squat heavy and deadlift heavy and run. My wife and I just timed our mile this morning
Nice.
and hike, 12 miles up a mountain. It's like, I can be not perfect on an x-ray and still live a beautiful life. And that's what I heard in what you were sharing. So that's kick butt.
Yeah. And that lady was just sitting there, and when she said her age, I'm like, hey, I'm not old. Come on. Don't give up now. You've got 30, 40 years to live. Let's go. So yeah.
We'll just get
It's great.
I appreciate the passion. I appreciate being on the call with you. And see you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Shane.